Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Cinephobia podcast. Today we have a special guest. It's Eli. Say hi.
Uh,
We're going to have another guest join us later in the podcast, hopefully not too much later. But today we're going to be talking about Joker. So,
Oh boy.
who wants to start this off?
Goodness. It's
uh,
yeah, that's kind of the reaction that I was expecting. It's quite the movie I feel like to open up. It's almost hard to figure out where to start with everything. It's I guess I'll just try from the beginning of the movie itself. It opens very bleakly, wouldn't you agree? I think
yeah,
it's it starts really sad. It's very dark. The setting is it sets itself up really beautifully. I think you can really get a feel for this world that the movie is bringing us into just from the opening scene of Arthur at his mirror at his clown. What's it called? Is the place he works? I think it's called Ha-Ha's.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and you can kind of get a feel for already what he's going through internally just from him trying to make himself smile and then frown and then smile and then just a tear. And the world around him is bombastic and loud, and you can already hear on the radio just things like the garbage levels in the streets and the crime rates and the segregations between rich people and poor. And just in like that first opening shot of the camera panning to that mirror and just looking at him, you can already like start to gather so much about the world.
Right, because I believe for the most part it's supposed to have like some basis in stuff that actually happened. Because there was like the trash riots, I believe,
Right.
in like
yeah.
the early
In
80s.
1981.
Yeah,
Yeah,
81. And so like the whole like classist system and the garbage riots, like stuff that actually happened in our world, is to help ground this, so that way when he does spiral, it's supposed to help paint the picture that this could happen. We need to get better care of our people.
Right.
yeah. I mean, for a for a DC comic film, it's kind of like Gotham's always been like this dark place. It's always like in every single movie or TV show or even video games that depict Gotham, it's always been like this really gloomy place. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this movie went that extra step and kind of showed really what it would be like to live in Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
The old Batman movies or any movies that take place in Gotham, you don't really see that. You see kind of this huge billionaire Bruce Wayne or something like that. In this movie, you get to see what it would be like to be a citizen in Gotham, living an everyday life, working a minimum wage job or something like that.
Right.
So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, because it's always like
Yeah.
the Art Deco Gotham, where it's just neo New York, and everyone
Yeah,
is either like a mob boss or a billionaire. And then
exactly.
seeing
Yeah.
from like the perspective of like people who would be like us, people who work at the movies or with dogs or something, people who are just like normal everyday people living
Right.
in a
Exactly.
like, not to be that guy, but who lives in a society like that.
Yeah, no, I love the world building in this movie. I thought it was great. It really did feel believable. Like if
Mm.
it definitely felt like a very realistic take on Gotham, like you mentioned. It was I agree. A lot of the games or the movies or the comics, like it's kind of you see one side of things. You either see like the really like the evil crime side, or you see like the rich, the billionaires, the millionaires, etc., stuff like that. And that's kind of the dichotomy between the two. But this movie kind of had you set in the middle, which
Yeah,
is almost the worst place to be.
yeah,
And I never really realized that until I watched that. But being stuck in the middle of this city that doesn't care about you, and you're not important, you're not one of the rich or the evil, like the awful crime related things. Like it's just a city of indifference. You're just one of the many cogs in the machine.
um, I don't like out of every when I first saw the trailer for this movie too, you don't the trailer and the movie are so different. First off,
Oh yeah.
the trailer kind of shows what you see in like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger, where you get this Joker that does all this extra killing and heist role play and all this stuff like that. In this movie, it's almost like you don't see the Joker until like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like you don't actually get to see Joker until like right before in the trailer when he asks Murray to call him the Joker. You don't actually see that until there. And so it was almost like it starts off really slow, like you were saying, like you don't really see basically what it looks like to live in Gotham for like the first 75-80% of the movie.
Hmm.
And so you actually get to see the Joker. And I think that was really cool how they did that because I think everybody that was wanted to see the movie was expecting to see Joker from the first 20 minutes of the film.
Hmm.
But you don't really get to see Joker until the very end.
You know, it really did follow more Arthur Fleck than I would say the Joker. But
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed seeing that because it was even from the beginning. Like I think of the scene directly after, even the beginning scene when he's smiling and cried a little bit in the mirror. Like you see, uh, pieces of Joker like kind of breaking through. Like Arthur himself is kind of cracking, and just underneath there's a bit of that Joker. And I think of the movie as like as the movie progresses, it's just more and more and more of the shell like breaking off, and then finally underneath it's just Joker, and there's no more Arthur.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of like what drives him into that, and it's just the slow spiral into this explosive transformation.
Mm.
Right, and like a piece of this movie that I loved that I thought I was gonna hate because like going into this movie I didn't want to watch it. The only reason I was watching it is because I know that you guys were super into it and I wanted to record it. I
Yeah.
personally would have not seen this movie and been super okay with myself.
Mm,
But having seen it, I know I would have hated not seeing it because what this movie does is what exactly I thought they were going to not do, which is give you a backstory and a name to the Joker. Which like the Joker, you're never supposed to know who he is. Which the movie they did that to this. There's like, yeah, this is who he is. But
mm,
then they also take away all the identity that you know from him. Like, oh, he's got this girlfriend that lives with him, and then nope, that's not real. And then
Oh. Oh.
he's
mm.
got like his name is Arthur Fleck, and then nope, turns out he's adopted. No one knows what his real name is.
Yeah.
I think the reality to what's like the reality concept of the movie was it was great because then you start questioning stuff that you think's real.
right.
Yeah,
Like as soon as they
definitely.
revealed that I don't remember her name, but Zazie Beats was not his. Like she didn't know who he was. It was like immediately I turned to Tyler. I was like, "Do you think that he actually got that call from the Murray Franklin show?" Because
Yeah,
like,
no, I definitely was. It was so insane when that happened because at that point it was so explosive, and I think everybody who was watching the audience itself was shocked because I usually can see a lot of twists and I'm pretty good at like picking up on hints. It was so, and it makes so much sense that it wasn't real either. I think was my favorite part.
right,
And it was so hard to see because now you're looking at the movie and you're like, I have no idea what actually has been happening. Any like it could have been real. Like so many scenes that could have happened, could have not happened. It could have been made up by him and his mind and his mental health. You know.
right, and like the thing that makes me the most upset, mainly in myself, is that I had made a joke that totally like predicts the like twist that like no, they're not really together, which was like
Yeah.
he made the like shooting himself joke, and then later in that scene he like shows up. I think it's like right
Oh.
after he kills the three dudes, he shows up and then he starts kissing her. And it's like so
Yeah.
it just takes like a murder and a bad joke, and then now she loves you. And
Yeah,
then,
and
like,
Yeah.
that's
after that, I just
exactly.
accepted it. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, cool. That's just
And
his
it makes
girlfriend.
so much sense that it's not. I really like that too. It was a lot of like those movie tropes, like a lot of like comic book movie tropes that were happening and kind of thrown at you that like you would expect from a superhero movie. Like, oh, it's actually the main villain is his father, you know, and like, oh,
Oh,
he gets the
man,
girl, and like
I
that's all it
hated when they
took.
did
Yeah.
that. It was like, yeah, no, Thomas Wayne is your father. God damn it. If you
Yeah,
make
and
Joker and Batman, like, actually brothers, I'll be pissed.
I
And then
exactly like
they
I
twisted
heard
that. It was
that.
like,
Yeah,
I'm so mad.
they.
I heard that and I
like,
sighed
it was
and
like
I
a
was like, man.
double twist. It's like, yeah, no, Thomas Wayne is your father. And it's like, I'm not your dad. Your mom's like an actual crazy person. And then
Yeah.
like the movie's
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, she's crazy. It's like, oh, oh.
Yeah, no, the reality was so much worse
Yeah.
than what could have been. Like, nothing was ever nice in the end. Like when I think of things like you assume the worst, and sometimes it turns out a lot better um, than what you expect. But this movie, it's you assume the worst, and somehow it's still
Like,
worse.
you assume, all right, this is the worst thing that's gonna happen. Please don't let it happen. And then it doesn't happen because something like 3 times as bad has happened. Like, how is this not worse?
Yeah, no,
It's I think the movie is a great job at doing that because they make, like I was saying about the reality, how like some is reality and some isn't. It makes you question what is real, and I think they do the same thing in aspects of like when bad things happen, uh, and then like Arthur capitalizes on them. It makes you root for him, and there are terrible things. Like when he found out that his mom, like you said, he's adopted and his mom abused him as a child. He goes and then kills his mom, and I was like, I was happy for him. I was
Yeah,
rooting
no,
for him.
honestly, it makes you feel a bit twisted for wanting these things to
Yeah.
happen, and it almost makes you it puts you in positions. I love that the movie does that. I think of the scene where he just murdered this is a bit farther in the movie. I want to jump back as well, but when he murders that the friend of his who gave him the revolver in
Oh
his
yeah.
Oh,
apartment, and
with the scissors.
yeah, with the scissors, and then
Yeah, same thing there.
the dwarf
Oh,
guy is there. I
why
can't think of his name. I can't.
Oh,
I can't think of the name. I can't think of his name.
I don't remember
He's,
the names either.
oh, and it's not. This horrible thing just happened, and then he's trying to get the door unlocked, and then he's like is so sweet and opens the door, and I'm there laughing at this horrible, awful
yeah.
scene that just happened.
Yeah, in the theater, me and you are the only ones laughing. The entire theater's silent because like he's like everyone's thinking, oh god, he can't reach the lock. He's gonna get murdered now too. And then you and me are like, he's tiny. He can't.
Yeah,
reach.
that,
I
it
thought
was
he was gonna kill him right there because that's what he. I thought Joker had planned for that door to not be able to be unlocked by him.
yeah.
It's the worst way to kill somebody.
Yep. Yeah, no.
God, like I don't know why, but every time I think of that scene, I think of the like opening scene from Monsters and Aliens, where like the husband side of the family has like short thumbs that skip a generation.
Oh
And
yeah,
she's trying to
I
open the
remember
door,
that.
but her thumb is too short. It's like, no, thumbs.
Oh man, you know that scene was quite funny. I'm trying to go back to where we were in the whole line of the narrative.
We were talking. You jumped forward to him killing the. I think his name
Yeah,
was Robert or Paul
Robert.
maybe.
Something. I will. Yeah, I'll go back towards the beginning because I want to actually kind of pick the movie apart, scene by scene, piece by piece, like act by act.
Right, the first like right at the beginning, when he gets jumped by those kids and they take the sign and they explode it on him because like for whatever reason it's a super flimsy sign.
Mhm.
But like right then he's getting the crap beat out of him, and then the next day he on his way home gets the crap beat out of him again, and then
Yep.
he just straight up murders 3 people. And watching that, you're like, yeah, you deserve that. You're
Yeah.
rooting for
No,
a
that
man to
was.
murder 3 people.
And it really makes you empathize with this person that with Arthur that normally no one would empathize with. Watching him in his struggle through this horrible life that he's living, just he's constantly beat down emotionally and physically a lot of the time. Like after he lost his job because his coworker gave him a gun and stuff. You know, it wasn't his fault. He just wanted to be safe. He didn't want to get the crap kicked out of him anymore. He didn't want to be like just pushed around. And he loved his job, and it was so hard to see him just crumble. And that's all he had, and just watching him go home and just have had the worst day ever, only for it to be worse. And these awful guys on this train that were harassing that poor lady just started beating the crap out of Arthur.
Right?
And watching it, you were like, I was so happy that these a-holes finally got what they deserved.
Yeah.
It was interesting to watch my brain think of it like that instead of just a horrible atrocity. Some people getting murdered, I was like they deserved it. And Arthur,
Yeah.
I'm happy he did that.
Like before the movie, there was talks around the theater that like, yeah, no, we can't like we got to be on high alert because if someone comes in, there like it could be all over. It could be another Columbus shooting with the Dark Knight, and
Right.
so like everyone's on high alert because like if another guy comes in and he kills people, that's it. He like there's a shooting happening, and
Yeah.
then watching the movie, you see a man take 3 lives in like the span of 2 minutes, and you're on his side.
Yeah.
Like this
Mm.
movie, like within I think it's like that whole first bit is 20 minutes. It takes you from like murder is wrong, and then it like chips off enough of you that you're like, okay, some murder is fine.
Yeah.
Until like it gets to the point that you're like, you were almost okay with him killing the midget who I looked up. His name is Gary. The guy with the gun was Randall.
Oh yeah. No, I loved, like it was. I loved how the movie did that. Like it really did like mess with how you think of things, because of course like murder is horrible, but these people that like you empathize with Arthur because he's just been getting beat down constantly, and you want to see him win for once, and he finally. I loved the scene after he killed those guys where he just runs to the bathroom, and I was watching an interview with
Oh yeah.
Todd Phillips about it, the director, and he was saying how originally in the script Arthur was supposed to run to the bathroom, hide his gun, wash his makeup off, and like look in the mirror.
Mm.
But apparently on the day of the shoot, they got to the set, and they didn't really think it sounded a lot like Arthur, what had already been written, and they just started playing music for Joaquin Phoenix, and he just started dancing to the music, and it was so much more. I like when I watched that scene of him just locking the door and just like doing that little dance, I feel like it portrayed like gave me so much more than like people just like if his character was to just say how he felt.
Yeah, I think him after he was scared. You know, he ran
Yeah.
and he was breathing hard. He was scared after he killed the three, and he knew he was questioning, well, why would I do that? I think when he got in the bathroom, it was great because him dancing was kind of him showing himself saying, "I'm okay with who I am now. I'm
Yeah.
okay with like it was him embracing the fact that he just killed three people, the fact that he's Joker, the fact that he's in this society that uh, is terrible, and he's completely fine with the person that he is at that point. And so I loved that scene right there. Yeah, I thought it was perfect for the movie. Oh, it was
It
great.
really was. I couldn't have even thought like I don't know how they actually ended up making that scene. It was just great. It was a great scene. I loved it thoroughly. It was a really good way to portray his full like starting to kind of crack and just turn into uh more crazy, but also more himself. He's
Mm-hmm.
finally starting to let go and to not like when his fake laughter and his fake smiles and his fake um presence, this mask he kind of puts on to the world is oddly comes off the more he puts on his Joker makeup, or the more he lets himself be himself.
Right. And then just like with the dancing version of that, because like in the bathroom he does like this kind of slow ballet because like it's the first time he's done something like that. And
Mhm.
then like when he killed his friend, and after he's like this like right before he goes to the Murray Franklin show, he's killed his old coworker, he's killed his mom. He's planning on killing either himself or Murray Franklin,
Mhm.
but like he's doing like this crazy erratic dance that you'd expect like a 4-year-old to do at a wedding. It's like
Yeah.
doing like air humps and like
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
spins, and then like the transition from like the slow kind of contained ballet to the like spaz dance. It
Yeah,
all
when he's
Yeah.
going
shows
down
that.
the steps. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Dude.
watching there's a clear like transition from one person to another. It's kind of like watching like one personality completely change, or like just a person like changing into a completely another person.
Yeah.
In the movie, like it's so weird through the music. I think does an amazing job,
Yeah.
along with like the score and along with the choreography like that. I think it definitely, without even knowing all of the plot, like you can definitely see that these people are very different from how he starts out, just like dancing alone in his apartment with his gun, to
Yeah.
what he fully embraces his kind of insanity.
like you said, just seeing the like kind of descent from like how he acts, from the beginning to the end. It's definitely not something that I wanted to see, but seeing it, like, not that I did want to see it in the sense of like, ugh, get this out of here, but like,
Hmm.
it's like something that like it's hard to watch because like seeing someone go crazy in the span of however long that movie takes place is
Hmm.
something that's upsetting to watch, and watching something like that, it throws you because like we've been saying that like watching the movie is making us like during the movie we're like, yeah, no, killing those guys makes sense, it's the logical step, but like
Hmm.
the fact that the movie makes you go crazy with Arthur without him realizing that he's going crazy, because like towards the end of the movie he's saying like, yeah, no, you made me think that this sort of stuff was a symptom and it was a disease, but it's who I am. And so like he thinks this entire time I've been crazy, but really I've just been suppressing who I am.
Yeah.
Because like they
Yeah.
never mention why he was in the like mental hospital before. Because like they just showed
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
the one little clip where it's like, remember when you were in the hospital, Arthur? And then it's just him like on the door,
Yeah.
and
Pounding his head
then
against
they
the
never showed
glass.
that again. And so like
Yeah.
him being crazy before, and then realizing, no, I'm not crazy. It's society who's crazy.
I watched this YouTube video. I watch a lot of comic YouTube video people, and I watched this one with basically like theories for the movie after the movie came out, like reviews and stuff. And it's crazy because after the scene where it shows that where he goes into the girl's house to her apartment,
Hmm.
and she's super scared because all of the interactions he's had with her have been in his mind. It was real, but it was really fake. He was just imagining it.
Right. He sat on his
Um,
couch after he had that really
yeah,
bad day.
YouTuber went the extra mile to say that the beginning of the film is the whole film is his imagination, and how at the end where he's running back and forth in the asylum, that he's been in the asylum the whole time, and this is just a vision of his.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard.
Ooh.
It's so
Crazy to
hard to
tell, of
know because he really is like an unreliable.
course.
So yeah, he's so hard for me to like believe anything the movie's telling me because it's from Arthur's perspective and he's not
Mhm.
exactly reliable.
Right, he's like
Yeah,
the narrator in Fight Club, where like half the stuff he
Yeah.
says ends up turning out to be a lie.
Yeah.
yeah,
It
and
was.
that's what another great aspect they did is the main character. You can't even trust the main character,
Yeah.
and then the main character's in a society where nobody can be trusted. And so it's crazy to like tell like where you're going. Like you just watch the movie and you don't really know what's real or what's happening or exactly what's he's this is all in his head or if it's all real. So it's pretty cool.
Right?
Yeah. I thought the scenes when it was showing like the awful just the awful world that he was living in, watching like his meds get cut off from him, that he desperately needed.
Oh yeah.
Clearly, watching their funding get cut, and just it, like he just that's all it took for him to just be screwed. Just funding's cut, and he no longer has access to medication. He doesn't have a therapist anymore. Not that she was amazing, but it was something, you know. And it was a lot from I think a lot from that point on was more delusions. After he got off his meds, he just was a lot more crazy. And at the end of the movie, I remember there was a scene where like he was like there was like two pills left and that was it. And then he's like, oh, I'm off my meds. I'm like after he murdered his mother, he's like, ah, my mom died. I'm celebrating. I stopped taking my meds, etc.
Right.
Yeah, and that's another thing is it's cool because I think people thought the Joker is this crazy person all the time, but this Joker seems to be a normal person in our society that could be using drugs to keep them maintained as an anchor, and like disorder he has a disorder that every like multiple people, tons of people have in our society, and he kind of likes to stay planted. And as soon as the drugs cut off, you immediately see a difference in the person he is.
Hmm.
And I think it's really cool how they show this because it's not like this superpower that he just has or this alter ego that he snaps into. It's like realistic that if somebody stopped taking their medications to keep them sane, this was what it would look like to them. This is what it would happen. And
Yeah, no,
so,
I think that the way that they showed mental health in this movie was, it wasn't a good, like it wasn't good like most of the times when you see things like mental health, it's really like more of a positive thing. And um uh it wasn't exactly like good mental health that was shown in this movie at all. It was really a awful depictions of it, but I think at the same time that was the most realistic way they could have shown mental health.
mm,
um and it really was a huge part of this movie, and I was happily surprised. I had no idea that he was going to have anything to do with mental health issues, and it was cool to see how grounded in reality it was. Like just things like being off your meds, and that's going to really affect you, or things like uh, getting beaten down in society, like physically and emotionally, and how those two are really dramatic downward spiral. But it's believable. It's something that could really happen to somebody.
that's why I feel like when you watch that, like, um, guy, you know that when we have the sign out in box that says, at our work, we work at the movie theaters, outside that says, um, is not your typical comic book movie. And I think that's like, it's great because when you watch the Avengers, when you watch any Marvel movie or like Aquaman even, you see these like super happy endings or these super like unrealistic, like these superheroes or these supervillains. And in this, it's kind of like this could literally happen to anybody in real life.
Right.
And so it kind of breaks it down to a fundamental like this probably could be somebody in New York right now. Like we don't even know. This is so realistic to how a normal human being could become something like that. And I think that's great. And because people kind of start to understand that this isn't something that is far from happening,
Yeah. I
having
think
super strength, but it's not far from being insane because of your meds, you know?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my favorite part of the entire film was definitely like it's when you find out that he's been like faking in his head the relationship he has with Zazie Beats, and
Yeah.
like he's like soaked, he's sad, he just had like his day ruined for him or his life even, and
Yeah.
like the only thing he can muster when she's like, "This is not your house. I think you live down the house. Are you okay? Is your name Arthur?" He just turns to her and he goes, "I had a bad day." And the reason I
Yeah.
love that is because in the comics, the Killing Joke, Joker's entire mission in that no, I think it's Killing Joke. His mission in that is to try to make Commissioner Gordon just as crazy as he is, because his whole mantra is that it just takes one really bad day to make the most sane person in the world as crazy as I am. And in that, he like shoots Barbara Gordon right in front of Commissioner Gordon, paralyzes her. It's implied that he either raped or molested her because there's a bunch of not photographic pictures, a bunch of pictures of her nude that you would not see had you not been doing stuff to her.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just to like make Commissioner Gordon go crazy, because the whole thing, like you said, one bad day can make the sanest guy as crazy as me. And then him
Yeah.
walking into that house being like, "I had a really bad day," is like the epitome of what Joker's going to be. It's like one bad day can make a real good guy go crazy.
Yeah, I definitely see that as like the end of like the second act, going into the third explosive finale of him just losing it
Mm.
when he finally realizes all that was a fantasy.
Right. I see that as the end of Arthur Fleck. I think
Yeah,
after that
no.
Yeah.
he's gone.
Yeah, he's definitely a shattered man at that point, and I think that the way he builds himself back up is through him being truly like Joker. Like there isn't much Arthur left.
Yeah. I think that was a great part too, because they show this like as Joker and every aspect of Joker we've seen in every different type of movie and TV show and everything, Joker never has ties to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have anything to lose. If he did, it would be that you could get to him. So he doesn't have anything to lose in almost every time you see Joker anywhere, he doesn't have anything to lose. And for the first part of the movie, he does because it's his mom, and so you know he's not Joker then. And I think that point where yeah, he's in that apartment is when it snaps and he becomes a Joker, because not only did he just kill his mom at the hospital right before that, he's cutting off the tie there by doing that. He also learns who he was when he was adopted and abused.
Right.
And also, it shows that little scene where it shows all the times he saw that girl was only in his mind. Her apartment was him snapping the bond there too.
Yeah.
And so after that, once he walks out of there, they play that really like punk rock music too when he's walking out of her apartment, and he has like his wet hair from his from being rained on and stuff. That when he's walking down the hallway, I feel like that's that moment where he's like no longer Arthur's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the movie
Really
really does a good job just by watching. I think my favorite part of the movie was all of Joaquin Phoenix's acting. He just did a really phenomenal job in terms of like just by his movements and his mannerisms, and like when he's trying to fit in so hard and it's so hard to watch, just like him put on what he thinks is like a good face for the world, but it's not him, you know. It's he still has like that fake laugh. He still has like it's not his whole self. But when the scenes, it's odd to me. I discussed this a bit with Emily actually. When he's yelling, when he's passionate about something, I think of the scene when he confronts Thomas Wayne, who he thinks is his father at the time, and he gets upset, rightfully. Like he seems the most normal then when he's yelling, which is almost backwards in my mind. Like that doesn't make much sense. But he when he's passionate and when he just wants, I think his words were like, "Can I just get like a little compassion, just a little like just be a good human being? Everybody's always yelling all the time. That's all there is." And he sounds like a human. Like fine, like this is finally like a normal human reaction to everything that's been happening to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, to connect what you're saying to something I was saying before is the fact that like while he's on medication and when he's living with his mom, he's under the impression that he's ill, and that because he is ill, but he thinks that all right, I'm ill, I'm taking these medications to make me normal. And then when he's finally like he's no longer taking his medication, he's starting to like cope with the disease that he has, and he's using that to be like to forge his new identity. Like the reason he's like seeming the most normal when he's getting upset and he's yelling at people is because like that is his identity. That's when he's the most normal, is when he's able to like let loose and show people like this is the ugly truth of what society really is. Why is this the situation? Because like right at the end, which because like I don't think we've actually spoken about the end when he's on the Murray Franklin show, and then like his last joke, what do you get when you cross a society that treats people like garbage with a person who just trying to make it by? You get what you deserve. And then he kills Murray Franklin. Yeah, just right in the head. Like
no.
And that's the bit is like him like finally fully embracing it. That's why he seems the most normal when he's acting the craziest, is because that's who he is deep down.
Right, exactly. You know, I really like that whole sequence of him at the very end there after he goes and finally gets on the show. Just like the way he comes out, like I remember him like planning on like doing a certain walkout, and when he does it his own way, you know, like he walks out on the stage his own way, very very dramatically, and just embraces all of the insanity that's happening right now, and he knows what he's going to do, but he still manages to go up there with a straight face and just like love being up there. You know, it was great to watch. I think him walk up and finally like being able to speak his mind, finally being able to tell that he killed those people and that he doesn't actually like care too much, like they deserved it, you know.
Right, yeah, and I love that because like I don't remember if it was me and you or me and Eli, but I was talking with someone, and like they were like, "Why'd you do it? Was it a political statement? What was it about?" It's like, no, it wasn't about politics. And, like he never once mentions that it was self defense, that they were beating the crap out of him, and that they were harassing this poor innocent lady. He doesn't bring that up. He's just like, no, they were ugly people in an ugly society. What I did was funny. That's the joke. And then they're like, no, that's not funny. him being like, yes, it is. That's how this situation works. He never once says it's self defense. He doesn't blame them for being monsters. He says if it was me dead on the ground, you guys would just walk right over me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's so hard in, I feel like, today's society. So there's that. To look around and feel like you matter a whole lot. I think social media is a good example of people like trying to be noticed, and that's kind of like what everybody's. I think deep down, some of everybody's the kind of desires to be a bit popular, to be noticed or be recognized as somebody. And I think his speech there at the end of how like if he were to die, you would just walk. A lot of people just relate to that because you a lot of the time, just even me, you walk through life and you don't feel very noticed. You don't feel very important. You just feel like another one of everybody else, you know. So when he finally is able to get up there and be noticed, I think that's insane. Like I really do think it was a really good way of showing him just embracing that is when he's finally noticed. That's when he's going to do his biggest act, his biggest joke.
Yeah.
Right. And like I liked the I don't remember what the correct term is for it, but the way they build up for him going on the show to kill himself as like the last joke is, oh, I hope my death has more meaning than my life did, or I hope my death makes more sense than my life did.
Yeah.
And then like him practicing on the show is like, oh hey, here's a joke for you. Knock knock. Who's there? And then he shoots himself.
Yeah.
And then like he brings the gun, he practices it again when he's like backstage, like, hey, when you bring me up, will you call me Joker? And then he sits back down, and then he's like, knock knock, and he points the gun at his own head. And then like when he gets up there, it's like, what do you get when you cross a society that we live in with a gun? And then he shoots Murray. What is it? Subversion? Is that the correct term?
Wait, what?
The like.
Of like building
subvert your
something up.
expectations.
Yeah, to subvert. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually really liked how they did that because when I remember looking at you during this scene, guy, and just when he finally talks to Murray with backstage and then goes up to walk out. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I think that was the most suspense I'd been in a long time in general, just because you have no idea what he's gonna do. It was so hard to just sit there and like something's gonna happen and you have no idea what he's going to do or when he's going to do it. It was like watching a bull in a china shop. You just don't know when he's gonna start breaking stuff, you know?
Right. It's like getting that text from your girlfriend saying we need to talk, but times like 100.
Exactly.
Like just this huge pit in your stomach. It's like, no, I am not okay. Like as soon as he was on the Franklin show, like just backstage, it's like, hey, Merzik, his name is Mr. Franklin. Like right at that point, it's like, oh no, I am not okay, and I was not okay the entire rest of the film. Like even on the car ride home, I was like not an okay person. It's like, oh, I feel gross inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the movie does a good job making you feel gross. I think it's gross. Yeah, on the car ride home, realizing that like every time the Joker killed somebody, I was extremely happy about it.
Yeah.
Like every single person that he killed in that movie, I was like totally fine with him killing, from his mom, the guy that gave him his gun, his coworker, to Murray, to the three guys on the bus. Like I was like, no, I'm not gonna worry. Like that's perfect. I don't care if you kill them. Good.
Yeah.
And crazy to think that like you're watching a movie, no matter in real life, like you wouldn't want to see anybody die like that. But in this movie, it makes you feel like even if somebody like that, and it just makes you want them to die. And it's just kind of crazy thinking about how a movie can make you want somebody to die, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, they really the way that they just put you through Arthur's situation, they really vividly, like they don't hold any punches honestly when it comes to just watching Arthur get beat down. So when he finally has some win, like he wins a little bit and people get treated how he gets treated, it's like, yes, finally there's actually like something being done about it, because nothing, like no no one else is doing anything about what's going on. And when he finally takes control, I think it's kind of like almost an example of kind of how everybody wants to be able to take control of their own life. Obviously, not as drastic as like kill that guy who cut you off in traffic, but just
Right.
like being able to take control and finally getting back at all those people who have beat you down.
Yeah.
Right, and having it be like what you were saying, where it's like he has no wins. Like every time he does something, it's always a loss for him. Like, oh, I heard that you got jumped. Here's a gun to protect yourself so that way you don't get jumped anymore. And then
Yeah.
the gun falls out at the children's hospital, and then he's fired because of that. And then the
Yeah.
guy who gave him the gun says, he was trying to buy guns off me all the time. So, like, he just,
Mm,
every loss is an even bigger loss that just, he trips, and then he falls downhill, and then it just never stops.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when he finally gets a win, which is murdering 3 people, at that point you're just so happy that he's finally winning at all that you're like willing to be like, yeah, murder those dudes.
Yeah, no, it was hard. It was hard to watch. I think I used the term like when we left the theater, I was like, yeah, it was like a train wreck, man. Like I couldn't look away. But the I think the movie did an amazing job in the sense of like scale, not for like the scene, like not for different. It's hard to explain. Like when it starts from something small, just watching one person's life just kind of unravel, but it gets bigger and more bombastic as it goes on, and it's so like the finale is just so built up and it's so incredible to watch. Like I just think of the scenes that just kind of made me like cheer, like when he finally like when he's going down the steps in that scene where he's getting chased and the like he's finally getting noticed. Like I think I like the what he said, I think, to his therapist. He was like, I never knew if I existed, but now I know I do. And
Right.
people are starting to notice. And like when he's going to the subway and there's all the other rioters who are like sympathizing with his cause, and not that they knew it was him at the time, but he just felt so important. And finally he's getting something. It wasn't what he wanted, but it's something. He's grasping at anything at this point. There's everything in his life has gone awful. He wanted to be a comedian, but I don't think he cares anymore about what he's noticed for. It's just as long as there's something that he's doing.
Yeah.
I kind of like to imagine that he still sees himself as a comedian. Like he got what
Yeah.
he wanted of, yeah, I want to be a comedian. It's just now he realized that I don't want to be a stand-up comedian. These are the jokes I want to tell, and the joke being is someone a horrible person in society. Just get rid of them. Boom.
All right.
That's the joke.
Yeah.
Like I think he's still staying true to his belief. It's just what he wanted out of those beliefs has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like he went from, oh, I don't know that I exist, so if I do stand up and people recognize me, then now I'll know that I exist because I'll get recognition from people, to I'm now the leader of this civil rights movement, and that's the joke. That's like an entirely like to him they're both forms of comedy. It's just different
Yeah.
mediums.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. Just like he definitely. I think they just did a great job of depicting a realistic Joker, because the things that he laughs at and just thinks are funny are fantastic. Like it doesn't it isn't funny, but I love when he talks about comedy being subjective to Murray, because he's kind of finally embraced that he isn't normal himself, and his what he thinks is funny can be subjective to him, and that's his jokes. That's the jokes he'll tell are just tragedies, honestly.
Yeah. No, what I like about it is also in this Joker, compared to like if you were to compare it to Heath Ledger, it's almost like you can't compare them because of the way they both play Joker were two totally different ways.
Right.
And not only that, it's almost like at the end of the movie when he gets put into the asylum again, you would see the Joker from The Dark Knight. That's the Joker he would be. So it's almost like this is a prequel to when the Heath Ledger's Joker, because once he came out, he would eventually come out the asylum possibly. knowing Joker, you would get this Joker that wants to do another thing or change the way society is, and then the Joker in this film where he's still becoming the Joker, because in the Dark Knight he's already the Joker when he's put on screen. So I think it's really cool how you'd see that.
Yeah, no, I loved watching it devolve into definitely somebody like Heath Ledger's Joker. Like you can it was a really good transition from one normal person to a person that could literally end up being somebody like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah.
Because from the start, you'd never like. I actually really empathize with Arthur in the beginning of the movie too. I thought he was genuinely a good person. I don't think he had any ill will for people originally, and it was just circumstance in society. So I just I can't recommend the movie enough. By the way, it was I love movies that give me a chance to discuss and break down even like social issues, and I really do think this one did a really amazing job
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah, I like not to sound like that guy, but I love movies that don't always have a happy ending. Just because
Mhm.
there's so many
Oh,
happy
yeah.
endings in movies nowadays. Like the
Dude,
last movie that I can think of
yeah.
that had a bummer ending, uh, it's Infinity War
Yeah.
and Get Out.
Yeah.
Both of those
Dude,
movies had bummer endings. No, Us. Sorry, not Get Out. Us. Both movies had like kind of a bummer ending, and it's nice
this
to
wasn't
see
even
that.
that bad. Plus, you could kind of see the moment where you're like, oh, that's okay. Like you wanted a regular life, you know? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely though, definitely with the bummer ending type of things. Because I think that's why, guy, you know this. I love comic book movies. I love comic books.
Mhm.
But I would choose DC over Marvel any day of the week, just because of the fact that you're getting darker films. You're not getting this super happy-go-lucky, we won again like type of thing. I'm not a big fan of that. Like when you see movies where favorite character that has went insane through the period of watching the movie now put in asylum at the ending, like that is it's just really good. And so
Yeah, I think that the darker ending here gave me a lot more. It made me feel things more emotionally than any happy ending could have.
yeah,
Especially with a movie like this, I don't think it was ever supposed to be a happy ending. That's not what it was about. The
yeah.
way that it ended made you feel things, and that's what I think this movie is about. Is just putting you through this experience that'll really make you feel a lot.
I think my favorite detail about the ending was like when he's done with the like he I don't know at what point this is after the like after the riots happen, but he's back in the asylum and then he's talking with the therapist who I'm pretty sure was his therapist from the beginning.
Hmm.
But she's like, "What are you laughing?" He's like, "Oh, it's a joke." He's like, "Can I hear it?" You wouldn't get it. It's between me and him. And it cuts to Bruce Wayne, and then like the next time we see him, he's walking out of the office with like bloody footprints on the ground, and he's dancing again.
Yeah.
Like I like even if everything we just saw was fake and only what's here is real, the fact that he's still deranged and totally just killed her and is dancing away is like something
Yeah.
crazy. Because like you're saying, if all of that was fake and only the scenes where he's in the mental hospital are real, then like he's still a
Yeah.
guy who's killing people. Because in that scene in the mental hospital, he just killed his therapist, and we
Yeah.
don't even get to know how. Because like there was nothing in the room
You
where we would have
know,
been able to see
I,
how
I'm
she
wondering
died.
how he managed to pull that off, dude.
And like, how did he get like? There's nothing in there that he would have been able to like harm her enough with that like she would have been bleeding enough that he couldn't trail that much footprints. So the fact that he
Yeah.
pulled it off with what little he had in there is like super terrifying to me.
And I love how you get this Joker fulfillment too when he's running by back and forth in the hallway. And people are laughing because, and he just couldn't away. And people
Yeah.
are laughing because it's just so Joker like to see him running back and forth
Very,
with
very Charlie Chaplin almost the way that they're running, and yeah,
uh, the nurses like chasing him down. It's so funny.
In my head, I
yeah,
was playing yakety sax. With...
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
exactly.
think that's what it's supposed to make you do too. Like it's
Yeah,
supposed to make you just the insanity has just completely taken over, and it's really cool to see him just completely be Joker now, even without the makeup and stuff. He just clearly is
Right?
Joker at the end when he's in the asylum there.
Yeah.
Like, and I love that. Like, I know we've said this so many times, but it bears repeating because that's like such a good part of the film is that they get you to laugh at things that you normally wouldn't laugh at because they're horrible things to laugh at. But that's exactly what happens to him. He goes from like a normal guy that doesn't want to laugh at these things that is now currently laughing at just like terrible, terrible things. It's like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I have this joke where I caused the murder of this guy who I thought could have been my brother for like 2 days. I had his parents murdered by accident, and now
Yeah.
me and him are connected forever.
Yeah, you're connected forever, and that's and they flash it. The flash is where you see Bruce standing above his parents, and it's kind of like them saying, "You know what happens from here on out.
Yeah.
Like you know the rest of the story." So we just had to catch you up on what happened previous to it.
Mm.
And so it's really cool how they do that because they Batman and Joker go at it for forever. They're a diamond duo, you know.
Mm.
So it's really cool to see how they kind of just show that. They don't need to explain any further because the viewers, if you're watching this movie, chances are you know what happens.
Right.
So
The one thing that like bugs me a little bit is that like in most Batman lore, he's 10. His parents are killed in front of him, and then when he's like actually fully Batman and he's in Gotham to stay, he's like 30. But
yeah,
this Joker is like canonically like 30 something in the
yeah,
like they said like yeah no like you're 30 something right now. And so if this is the same Joker that ends up fighting Batman, he's going to be like 50 by time that the Batman is Batman. And so it's like that's weird. I don't know if
Yeah.
Batman's going to
I,
fight
Also,
a
I mean,
50-year-old dude.
I was watching a thing with Todd Phillips, and like they didn't take the time to like try to address the whole and like the future of whatever, because they just really wanted to focus on this backstory, not even like needing to be super canonical, but just I think Phillips was just crap shooting because it could be anything. He's like maybe the acts that Arthur did will actually inspire the Joker in this
exactly.
universe later to the Joker that actually ends up fighting with Batman and their whole thing, or it could just be like there's so many ways you can
Oh
look
yeah,
at it, and I kind of like that. There's no definitive like next thing that's gonna happen is Batman with this Joker, Batman with another Joker. It's just something like it just a piece of like the history of this lore of the series, and it just kind of like shows you it in this snapshot of this movie, and that's all they give you. There's not like sequel baiting or what's going to happen next or what's going to come next. They just wanted to show this, and that was it.
I
Right, and I
think you
love
can kind
that.
of make, yeah, exactly, yeah, you can kind of make. It's really up to the fans. You can make the guess that and look like he's 90 when he plays the Joker, or you could go the route that's like you could just say that somebody picks up the Joker mantle and kind of goes with the idea of him again in the future, and that's the guy that Batman wound up fighting.
Right.
But and that's what I'm saying. They didn't want to draw the focus there, even though that is a big question. I think people need to understand that this is probably going to be a solo film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It won't get a sequel, even if they like they're killing it in box office. Even if they do kill it in box office, I can't see them making a sequel. I
I
know
think
Todd Phillips wants like
Joaquin
a dark
Phoenix was saying
DC,
that he wouldn't mind doing a sequel if like the script came to him. He's like, yeah, no, if you guys want to do a sequel, I'll do a second one.
but it have to be really good though, because as soon as you introduce like if you had a sequel and then you introduce the Joker with Batman, you'd have to be careful because this Joker is very. It's like an art. This movie is like a piece of art, and once you add Batman, it might become more like a comic book movie, with and stuff like that. So you'd have to be pretty careful doing that.
I
Right.
think Phillips said that he would never actually like he'd never bring this Joker, this version of Joker, even if there was a sequel, into a fight with Batman.
Yeah,
Yeah. I know there's a few fans that actually really would like to see that crossover, but I know Phillips has said personally that just like I'll never cross him over. It's just I like focusing on the story of Fleck and the standalone stuff.
that's good. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I was worried about that too personally because I didn't. I just really enjoyed how the movie focused so heavily on just one story because they did such a good job at it.
yeah,
Um, it's kind of like kind of reminds me of Marvel movies and stuff when like you get one whole movie like Iron Man about like a really good standalone story, And
Yeah.
then like when Avengers and stuff, or when there's a lot of crossovers, like it's hard to focus on one single narrative or like have much character development because there's so much happening that you almost don't have time for it.
I feel like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the MCU is killing it and it's amazing. But Endgame, you don't have any character development with characters that were just introduced. Like they flash characters, like at the end scene in the fight. Like you're only getting the characters all together. You don't have enough time, and they crammed everything in, and still was a 3 hour long movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's hard to incorporate more than like a couple people that are main characters. Otherwise, you find yourself running out of time and running out of character development because
Right.
like a time limit. You can't just make a 10 hour long movie. So
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then again, I don't know if like Endgame and Infinity War are for like character development of anyone other than like
Yeah.
the villain. Like I think Infinity War is Thanos' story, and then Endgame is like undoing that. So you don't really need character development for most of these characters because a good chunk of them already have like 2 movies to their name. But back to like Joker, the one thing I can think of that would be a decent sequel would be is if they were doing what you guys ever watch Gotham?
oh, I've watched. Oh, it's so good. I love Gotham. I've watched every season. I love that show.
Like remember when they first introduced Joker and then like at the
Oh,
end of that they just killed him off after he already started this uprising? And like the whole point of it was supposed to be like, "Oh yeah, look, it's Joker. What? It's Joker." And then they kill him to emphasize the point that no, you're not supposed to know who Joker is. He could be anyone.
exactly.
And then like they undid that later like twice I think. I haven't had cable for a long time, but like I think that's the only thing that they could do for a sequel that would do this story justice is if at the end like Walking Phoenix is just he's dead, he's no longer the Joker, and then just some unknown person picks up the mantle like you were saying, and then that's just how his story ends. Like he's no longer the Joker because we know who this character is, and so if someone we don't know grabs the mantle and becomes him, that fits along with like the whole like lore of Joker of like you don't know who he is. He could be anybody. It just takes
Yeah.
one really bad day.
And yeah, that's really cool is because you can get that same villain over and over. It's never really an ending type of villain where if they die, they're done. It's more of an idea that is so you can't kill an idea.
Yeah, it's a certain ideology that just
So
kind of
pretty
keeps
cool.
things going and going.
And I love how like every single different version of Joker is always like some different twist of the same idea. Like Jack Nicholson, his version of the Joker is like the gangster Joker who like was not an extreme as this like the Walking Phoenix version of like just one bad day where his boss tried to have him killed and then he got thrown into a vat of toxic waste and then now he's like a clown and so like he's like, you know, screw it, let's roll with it, and then he just goes crazy. Heath Ledger's Joker, where like the most like a lot of conspiracy theories, one of which I love is that he's ex-military, and
Yeah.
that's like the reason that he's an anarchist is because he's like, yeah, no, you just throw away soldiers. Why do we do this?
I read
And
that
so
theory.
he's just like, screw it, and he's fed up. And he's the idea of like the one bad day being like the day that I almost died because the military is not looked after. Jared Leto's Joker, we never really get much about him other than like, oh, he's kooky and from Hot Topic. But like, I feel like if we get more info on him, then we could probably understand his version. And it's like all these different twists of like the madness, where like the method is more madness. And so it's different ideology, like not it's the same ideology branched out into different paths. Like heck, even Mark Hamill for the Arkham franchise and the Batman animated series, which I believe, if I'm correct, they were finally confirmed to be the same universe because like all the voice actors are the same, and it's practically the same thing. But like him, he's the ideology of like you and me are the same. We're different sides of the same coin, and so I never want to not be with you. that's
Yeah.
his version of kooky is not his version. His ideology of the system is he wants to break Batman to prove his point of the one bad day. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
keep going back to that. It's just that's the one thing that
You
sticks with
see
me.
that in a lot of aspects of Batman, like in The Dark Knight, with when they're on top of the building at the end of The Dark Knight, and he's telling, well, multiple times. When first off, when he's riding his bike, hit me. I want you to hit me.
Hit me. Come on, I want you to hit me.
And
Do it.
and then he doesn't, because that's his rule. That's Batman's one rule. And Joker talks about having to break it if you want to get me. And then at the end, the same thing where he drops him off the building and then catches him before he dies or hits the ground.
Right.
So he doesn't die. Saying is Joker wants to prove to society that even your most uncorruptible person can be corrupt, you know?
Right.
And so
And like something I love about
it's
that Joker is like multiple times in the movies, like, yeah, I like using knives because when people are about to die, you can see their true colors. And then like he's thrown off a building. He doesn't know Batman's about to save him. He thinks, yes, I finally broke him, and he's laughing the entire time down. And it's not until he gets saved that he realizes that he isn't gonna die, and then he's upset. Like he's about to die, and he's going out laughing.
And then he tells him once he strings him up, he's like, "You're truly uncorruptible." And yeah, it's crazy. It's really cool though how they polar opposites and they literally are always together. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, speaking of like opposites and coins, Two-Face, that's what they did to him. Is like he went from like the proud district attorney
Exactly.
who like is like the best guy to like actually straight up murdering people, just like what Joker's trying to get from most people. It's like, yeah, no, just let out your inner ambitions, feel the rain on your skin, murder a man.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed all the different ways the Joker has been shown throughout the years, and each one has a different thing. And this one, definitely, I think, kind of struck with me the most.
Yeah.
Which is I think it was definitely the most relatable.
Mm.
Joker, just because you're able to watch its progression very thoroughly. I think this is personally probably my favorite rendition, but that can be different. That everybody is going to have the opinion on who their favorite is personally. I think it's kind of silly almost to rank them because they're so vastly different.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, that was it was Joker. I thought it was definitely kind of went through it on this one. It was definitely makes you feel a lot, makes you feel a lot of things, and it's a good movie because it's able to do that.
Right. It's not very often that I go into a movie and I feel gross watching it, and yet I want to continue watching it. Like,
Yeah.
when I feel gross watching movies, it's typically because it's like some sort of Saw or Saw knockoff, where it's like, oh look, his eye is being eaten by a dog, and you're like, ew, gross.
Yeah.
But this one you feel gross because like, oh no, stop, and like, it's the fact that this could happen to anyone at any time.
Yeah.
Like especially right now with like healthcare being such a big issue. Like we get so many people who can't afford to do things that could literally save their lives because some people in the government believe that healthcare shouldn't be like a human right.
Yeah, and I like the amount of social issues it touches on, even though it's set in the past, not too long, it's like the 1980s, I believe. There's still a lot of social issues that are extremely relevant to just what's going on right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of showing like I read a review on the movie, and it was saying that like this movie, if it wasn't a comic book movie, if it wasn't like you could name it just Arthur at the title, and you could take off the DC sticker on it, and you wouldn't even be able to tell.
Yeah.
The matter is that it's really just a big movie on today, and it's not really like it's not like a comic book movie like you would see normally. So it really is just a pure film of a society, and it's so much driven by the idea of DC comics and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I definitely like the depiction of it 100%.
Yeah, it's the I think me and Tyler were talking about this in a different episode of a podcast. We were doing Mortal Kombat, which ended up turning into video games, and we were talking about Resident Evil, where if you got rid of the title and like changed character names, it's a great standalone film. But the way they did it is like they tied it to a pre-established thing, and it became a horrible version. But this
Yeah.
does the exact opposite, where like it'd be a great standalone film, and the way they tied it into the DC universe, like it was like it's perfect. I think I already said this,
Yeah.
but I went into this expecting to hate it, and so watching this movie, seeing like, how well they handled everything, and the fact that this is now one of my favorite DC movies, they did really well in this movie.
Yeah, no, you 100% agree. That's all I have. I think for Joker.
Out of a 1 to 10, guess what would we give it?
Oh,
We
me
don't,
me
we don't do that
personally.
here.
Yeah. Oh
Just kidding.
goodness. I was gonna say it's so hard to it. It's kind of hard to judge it based off that. I just think it's a great movie overall. I don't even know if I have a specific number for it. I don't want to get anybody's thing up or down. I just think it's definitely a must see, as well as
Yeah.
what I'll say.
I'd give it a 10.
Give it a
No.
9.9.9.
No, I
0.9.
wouldn't. I don't.
No,
I,
I'm just
I don't think I'd say 10.
No, it was really good.
Yeah,
I
I'd
mean,
say
some
like 10
people are
reserved
gonna
for
take
perfect
different
movies.
like I know some people that didn't like it very much because they're a big fan of happy-go-lucky, like comic book hero movies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people that really enjoyed it just for the movie itself. So it really depends on the way you look at a film like this one to enjoy it or not. But
Yeah, if you're able to separate your expectations and just go into it just to watch and experience this movie, because it really is an experience, I think that
Yeah.
you'll find a good time in being able to just relate and just something that's really unique.
All right. Well, I think unless anyone has any last things to add, I think we've covered everything that we can cover without bearing on old tracks, which I know I've done a lot of this episode. I'm glad you guys, every time I was treading back, you guys found something new to pull out of it, so it wasn't just me saying the same three things over and over again.
Relatable.
But
Yeah.
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 So this was a nice episode of the podcast. Thank you, Eli. You
or
want to go ahead and plug anything that you want people to follow you on?
Instagram at Eli_Treeli.
All right, that'll be in the description below too, in case you are unable to spell Eli Treeli. Because like I know how to spell it, but hearing him say it always throws me. It's like, well, that's no. But yeah, this was a nice episode with everyone. And if you guys join us next time, we're gonna be talking about Tyler's favorite movie, There Will Be Blood.
Yep. Thank you for watching.
The only thing I want to end this on is that our first episode was it. This episode is about Joker. So we got clowns to the left of me, Jokers to the right, and here I am, stuck in the middle with you. All right. Everyone have a great night.